It was a dark, stormy night in the town of Bradford, and a young woman sat on her bedroom floor, drinking a glass of wine and talking into her phone. And everyone thought this was abnormal, except for her, because she knew that she had listeners who loved her and followed her voice and listened to her stories and appreciated her ability to tell you more information than you wanted. That's me. So welcome back to My Life as a Social Experiment. The reason why I came up with that name, for those of you who have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about, is because I, for some time, have thought, dang, my life would make a really good movie. And then I'm like, wait a minute, that's not a good thing. I mean, unless it was positive. But I guess it is turning out positive. And that's going to be the point of tonight's blathering, is change and how it is in your ability to make dark things light again. So I've made it one of my goals to just strip down as often as possible and release some of the shit that I carry into the universe in hopes that it'll help other people navigate some of the shit that they're going through. And I'm willing to do that because I've got nothing to lose. And I say that in a very positive way. But I also say it in a way knowing that I really don't have anything else to lose. And so this is my gift to others, is the fact that I can tell you things that other people probably wouldn't. So you can learn from them. So I'll tell you right off the bat about something that happened not too long ago. It was a big change in my life, and I was the author of it. And it was hard. It was scary, but I did it. And I didn't come out in one piece. I came out pretty shredded. But I just got word that I am accepted into the Vermont Leadership Institute, the 2019-2020 cohort, the 25th anniversary of the Leadership Institute. And I couldn't be more excited. I would never have thought that I would be accepted in such a program, ever. So back up a couple of years, when I was the author of my own destruction. And so I'll just start telling the story. The little gems of wisdom will pop out when they are ready. So a couple of years ago, we were in a situation, living in a house with the children, and it was one of those house purchases back in 2007, just before everything fell apart, the housing market fell apart. And so our mortgage was a ballooning mortgage, and it was just getting bigger and bigger, and things were fluctuating in the family in good ways. More children, a loss of a job, but then a start of a business, which was very successful. But that business, that home business, also led to some psychological stuff that, without giving too much detail, started to break apart the fairy tale story that we were living. I mean, I guess not fairy tale, but everything was going as normal as it should, with a family, with a home, 2 cars, 2 kids, and then a third, and trying to just get by, growing a garden, all the stuff, all the boxes were checked, let's say. But then we had a influx of psycho conspiracy theorists through the internet that came in and poisoned our home. And those crazy conspiracy theories started affecting my relationship. This is not me. I was not the conspiracy theorist. I didn't buy that shit for a second. But it came into the home through the computer, through some spare time, and infiltrated our family. And over the course of 2 years, our home with the garden became our home with the weapons and the ammunition and the body armor and the gas mask and the iodine pills and the Geiger counter and the bins and bins of emergency supplies and the boxes and boxes shipped to the house of MREs and the crazy theories and another gun and another gun. And $12,000 later, we couldn't pay our taxes. And this is a really broad brushstroke over the details that happened in that time. But I was a mess. I was trying to raise children in a home that had unlocked weapons, and I had absolutely no say if these weapons could be locked up or not. I asked them to be locked up, and I was refused. And so I started to just stay quiet, because every time I would bring something up, I would be shut down immediately. Nothing I said held any weight. And I knew that. I was told to do things, not asked. And the things that were coming into the house, I never knew about until they showed up. But I normalized all that abnormal. But over time, I started reading a book. And this book was about self-empowerment, and not a self-help book. I mean, I suppose it could be considered such. But this book was my savior. And the other thing that helped was I joined a pipe band. So I joined the Catamount Pipe Band. And in that band, I learned that I had value. I learned that I could pick up a new skill at my advanced age at the time. I thought life was over. I thought that it was now my duty to just move the kids forward, nothing else. While at the same time, my partner was moving forward in his life. He joined the band. He planned on doing things. He collected books. He collected stuff. He had a library of CDs in alphabetical order that I was not allowed to touch. And so there were times where I would feel guilty about wanting to do something for myself personally. And this would not go over well. And so I just stopped. I completely I just blended into him because there was nothing else I could do. That was all I could do. And I was so friggin' exhausted. I was, raising kids. I was so tired. I had nothing left in me to argue. Couldn't do it. So here I am in my bedroom, surrounded by guns, unlocked guns, and these metal boxes of ammo. And this would be normal in a house where people weren't vegetarians, and we didn't hunt. This was for possible outside attack. And this was told to me. Either government, if they came and tried to take away our whatever, we would be armed, and people would want to come to us for protection. And there was even a time where there was some web searches done about getting a container box that could be buried and become a bunker. And this was the trajectory of my life. And something, thank Odin, whoever's up there, thank goodness that something struck me across the head and said, "You fucking idiot, you gotta get out of this." Towing the line with someone who obviously he couldn't control what was going on. I mean, and honestly, I think whatever. I'm not going to speak on his behalf. I could control what I was doing in that situation. And I had to stop blending in and being quiet. And so, if you're still listening and you've been in a relationship with a powerful person, then you know how difficult it is to go against the abnormal status quo, let's say. It puts you at risk. It puts your children at risk. It puts your life at risk. And in that sense, I mean, for a young mother with a part-time job, tossing the breadwinner out the door meant, you lose your house. You just lose. And the possibility of me ending up in the street in a cardboard box was very real, and ending up in the street in a cardboard box, I shouldn't say that. I take that back. But just having no place to go, having to depend on others to make it by, while the person who was powerful enough and has enough assets could just carry on. So in this situation, in this house, I started to see that things were no longer agreeing with me. I had something to say about it. And so I started building myself up for this great change. And this reminds me of how I finished the last podcast with a poem that I wrote. And the last line of that poem was, "Destruction is a welcome release from the preparation for war." I'll read it again. Destruction is a welcome release from the preparation for war. And so there were two stories going on here. One, I was living with someone who was preparing for war. Preparing for war that it didn't exist. And in doing so, creating a war within inside his own home. And so I started building up my reserve. I started stockpiling metaphorical rolls of toilet paper, enough to build a fort with, toothpaste and whatever, fluoride filters and all kinds of stuff that kept you safe from the outside boogeymen. So I started building up my reserve and stockpiling bits of just self-worth, piecing it back together in order to figure out a way to get out of the situation. And I didn't know what the next step was going to be. I just knew that it had to happen. So the house started to fall into disrepair because there was at least $12,000 spent on all this stuff that I was talking about. The weapons and the prep items and stuff, other stuff. So $12,000 going out towards items that didn't benefit the household directly meant that there weren't enough funds to pay the taxes. So now we had a tax debt and no medical insurance. And the house was, kind of falling apart. I was falling apart. And our relationship started to fall apart. And there was not enough preparation on his end to protect that war from coming. And I stood at that point in this place of supposed power in my own right. I held the